Hello and welcome to the Engage to Succeed podcast. Today I'm joined by my wife, Nikki Lambert, and what we've decided to do is she's going to interview me to find out more about Engage to Succeed, what we've been up to. We're coming up to our annual or our first year anniversary. So what she wanted to do is just interview me to find out about the business, find out about some of the clients, find out about a little bit more about what we do. And hopefully you'll find it informative as we go. And some insights into some of the outputs that we've had so far in the first year. So welcome to the podcast, Nikki.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. So hopefully I won't be asking you anything that you can't answer. So I'm just going to rattle through a few questions for you, James, but feel free to kind of add as you see fit. So I guess just to kick off, give me your elevator pitch. In a few words, what does Engage to Succeed do?
Okay, so it's probably changed a little bit over the course of the last year, but here we go. So Engage to Succeed is an organization that helps businesses create a culture of engagement. Now, what does that mean? Actually, what is employee engagement? It's a big unknown to a lot of people, and most people talk about a survey, but that's not what we do. We help organizations create that strategy that ultimately means that their employees can start to love their job more every day. And we simply do that. And you've seen the model, but we simply do that by using the Engage to Succeed model. And the model looks at passion and performance, and it has 4 levels of engagement. And very quickly, an individual can understand where they are on the model and why they are where they are. And we help them to do that. We help managers to have more effective conversations with their team, and we help organizations create the strategy. Ultimately, that's what we do.
Okay. So you mentioned there a culture of engagement.
Yes.
What does that mean? What is this?
So culture is an interesting thing. Organizational culture is always an interesting thing. It's a much debated topic. How do you build a culture within the business, full stop? And organizations try this and have worked on it for years and years. And to actually shift a culture, they often say to shift a culture takes 5 years to actually move from today to tomorrow and the new culture. But what I talk about is a culture of engagement. Over the years, and I've worked in many large corporate organizations throughout my career, and they all had culture and they all had values, but does that culture really come through in an organization? Often it doesn't. And the reason, and this is my personal opinion, the reason that it doesn't is because of this. Everybody is different. So yes, people might buy into a culture and might go, here's our vision, here's our aim, here's our mission. That all helps to build the culture. The values are sort of the behaviors of the people that are there. And yes, values do drive that. But ultimately, everybody is individual. And so if you really want to get culture of engagement, it's less about driving the culture from an organizational perspective. And it's more about helping individuals understand what they love to do and how to get the best out of the people. We all know that when you've worked in a team or when you've worked in an environment where everyone is, and I use the word engaged, the output and the productivity of that team is phenomenal. I reflect back to many points in my career and I go, look, we had a great team here. We were all on the same page. We knew where we were going. We understood each other well. Everyone knew everybody else's strengths and weaknesses. And therefore we would align work to the right people. And that really is what I mean when I talk about driving a culture of engagement is how do you engage with your employees to get the best out of them? Hence the phrase, how do you help your employees to love their job more every day? And it's always difficult to get 100% of people loving their job every day, but even if you get 80% or 70% of the people that are doing it, the joy there is that actually the output is that much more significant. And so what a culture of engagement is all about is about creating that environment to help everyone to be the best that they can be.
Brilliant. And you mentioned as well that Engage to Succeed is underpinned by your model, the model that you've developed. So what are, just high level, what are the principles of that model?
Yeah, sure. So I think the two fundamental principles of it are we look at it from a passion perspective. The passion is the thing that drives people. And as I've just said, people want to do more of what they love to do. And if they're doing more of what they love to do, generally it makes them love their job more or love their life more every day. The other thing that it looks at is performance. So again, the higher the performance or the higher the output, the performance of the individual, often the better you perform at something, the more engaged you are. So they're the two principles, passion and performance. The second thing about it, which is unique compared to other engagement processes out there, is that we talk very much about it from a perspective of life. Yes, work is important and you're employed to do a job. Yes, that is critical, right? You can't spend all your time doing stuff outside of work that you love to do that doesn't relate to doing your job. So yes, job is important. But the reason we talk about life is because of this. What goes on outside of work often comes into work, and what goes on at work often goes outside of work. So it's important to get that balance right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's so much talk and so much chat at the moment about well-being, mental health, all of these things, whether it be menopause, et cetera, et cetera. And actually, those things, I can't necessarily say that you overcome them, because some of them are biological issues with the body. But actually, it's important that we're aware of them, because often they are driven by not doing the stuff outside of work. You know me well, Nikki. If I don't run, if I don't cycle, if I don't swim, if I don't get out, if we don't go walking with Luna, if we don't do those things that we love, what happens to us? Those evenings become dull, right? Or we're not as happy as we are when we're doing those things. When we're not in the trees.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's a fact. So we make time to do those things independently, make time to do those things together. And we both, when we do them, it really helps us to focus on what we do at work. And that's why life bit comes in, right? And when we are out walking, we also we might not be just doing it from a personal perspective, but when we're out walking, as an example, we get our great ideas. Mm-hmm. We talk about things together. We share ideas. We bounce off each other more. So it actually, inadvertently, we're not working, but we are actually being creative and helping with work.
Yeah.
They're the two principles: life passions and life performance. You've got to get them in sync.
Okay.
And often people ask, well, what is sync, James? And that sync is different for everybody. Some people, and again, it depends on their life, what's going on, family, whatever it is. But some people, they like to do 70% of their life is work, 30% is personal. Some people, it's 60% is personal, 40% is work. Because what's happening in their life depends on what those parameters are from a sync perspective. And then the model is broken down into 4 different levels. On the up, flying high, which is high passion, high performance is flying high. Roller coaster ride, low passion, high performance. Stuck in a rut, low performance, low passion. And I should have said on the up is high passion, low performance. So it looks at those 4 levels of engagement, and those levels are driven by the amount of passion and performance that you have.
Okay. So you've mentioned that it is it's a very, very different take on employee engagement. And how have you approached some of the clients that you've worked with to embed those principles when it's something that's relatively brand new to an organization?
Yeah, so it's often one of the things that I get asked by clients. Great, love the model, love the concept, makes absolute sense. How on earth do we embed this in an organization, James? And it's relatively straightforward. It's straightforward from my perspective, but I work it through in a 3-tier process. Ultimately, the first step to embedding it is that you have to get the executives and the senior leadership team bought into the concept of the model. Once they're bought into the concept of the model and they understand where they are on the model and why they're where they are on the model, that's the first step. Because if the executives and senior leadership team start talking about it from a level perspective and start understanding why people move around the model and start to spot what behaviors might move somebody from flying high to roller coaster ride, that's the first step. Once the senior leadership team, the executive team have kind of been through that process and they've bought into it, it's then about working down through the organization. So the next thing that we do is we work with the management team and leaders. And we do that by using a workshop called Engage to Lead. Engage to Lead is a one-day workshop. It can be best run in a full day, but can be run over a couple of sessions. But we take managers on a journey that says, where are you? They have to understand the model. They have to understand where they are, why they are where they are. And then once they've understood where they are, they then use the model to then have much more effective conversations with their team. So the two clear things with the management and Engage to Lead that I always talk to people about. First and foremost, I love the phrase, and I always use the phrase, one dead battery can't jumpstart another. Mm-hmm. If your management team aren't engaged, you are never going to get their team engaged. Yeah. There might be one or two because they're enthusiastic and they know that they want to do certain things for their career, but they're never going to get a high-performing team if the manager is not engaged. So one dead battery can't jumpstart another. That's the first thing. The second thing that I always, again, talk to people about is this. Gallup did a survey recently around management conversations. And only 16% of employees said they had an effective weekly conversation with their manager. I mean, I always say that's a really stark fact. If you have a team of 10 people, less than 2 people are having an effective conversation with their manager. Now, if you're not having an effective conversation with your manager, how engaged do you think you're going to be? Mm-hmm. You're probably not. So it's also about how do you have an effective conversation? How does the manager take control of that conversation to make sure that they're giving their team or their employees what they need? Yeah. And so the model helps them to do that because it creates this opportunity to have much more of open dialogue around where you are and why you are where you are. So that's the second stage, working with the management team with Engage to Lead. The third stage is then looking at the individual contributors, and there are the employees in the organization. Again, we use the model and we have a program called Engage to Succeed, the name of the business. And Engage to Succeed is helping people to understand their own. So it takes them on a journey of discovery. It helps them to understand what drives them, what their motivators are, what their aspirations are, what their passions are, and then how they can bring that into their day job. I always say, it's a bit corny and a bit cheesy, this one, but I always say it's like a sandwich engagement. Start the day and finish the day, that's the bread, with the things that you love to do the most. Yeah. So if you start the day, you start feeling really positive about it. Yes, you might dip in the middle of the day because not every element of every job you're going to love. And then the final thing to do is always make sure you finish the day doing something that you love, because then you finish on a high and you take that into having dinner with my wife. Not always the case, but
with a smile on your face.
there's my little tip in the middle of it. But Engage to Succeed is about helping people to understand their engagement, understand themselves better, and then how they can start doing more of what they love to love their job more every day. Yeah. And finally, when you've got a manager that understands the model and an individual contributor that understands the model, guess what happens? That conversation that they have on a weekly basis becomes much more effective because they're starting to talk about things that they've not talked about before. It might be around, what are you doing to help with your development, with your growth, with maybe it might be something to do with, family care, or it could be something to do with outside of work. But just having those little nuggets of something that you can share with your manager that changes that dialogue and conversation. And that is all you often need to have an effective conversation. Yeah. So we work with the individuals to go through that. And then we also work with them to help them have more effective conversations as well. An effective conversation with somebody, when you get into the science behind it, is not a one-way conversation. It has to be a two-way conversation. So it's also about helping individuals feel comfortable managing up, being open, being honest, saying, look, this isn't working for me, and this is why it's not working for me, and is there anything we can do to change it, or can you support me with it? Because that's often the problem, is people don't feel they have they often don't have the confidence, or they don't feel they have the right to have those conversations with their managers. So we help them to do that as well. So that's it. Start with the executive team, get them to understand it, get them to bought into it. And we tend to do that with a program. I didn't mention the program Engage to Win, but we tend to do that with the executive team. Yeah. We then move down to the managers and leaders, and we do Engage to Lead. And then we do the individual contributors, which is Engage to Succeed. And then that's how you embed it, because everyone understands the model, everyone understands why, everyone understands that this is the meaning behind it, and therefore it becomes easy to embed it. So we totally flip engagement on the head by saying employee engagement isn't a survey. Employee engagement to a business is about helping everybody to love their job more every day. And we do that by implementing and using the model to have effective conversations and help people to guide and create journeys and paths for their future.
So in terms of your ideal client, so looking back over that, you mentioned you're coming up to your first year anniversary, thinking about the conversations you've had, some of the people you've been working with, what type of company would you say that you would have the biggest impact in?
So at the moment, where I'm having success is probably businesses under 2,000 people is the starting point. That's not to say that I'm not having conversations with people with organizations bigger than that, but the embedding bit becomes a little bit harder when you start going up to 5, 6, 10, 15, 20,000. And when you get to those bigger organizations, it's about working with their L&D teams to help with that embedding of the principles. But at the moment, the ones where I'm having success are sort of around probably the sub 2,000, 200 to 2,000, let's say. And there are often themes that come out of it, not necessarily the sector or the type of organization, but there are themes that are coming out where we're having the biggest impact. And those are kind of one of three, if you like. The first one, I've talked about driving a culture of engagement. The first one is absolutely around where an organization's culture isn't as prominent as it should be, or maybe they've lost their way a little bit with where they're going as an organization, and that they're not getting the buy-in from their employees on where they're going. So it's more of an engagement strategy perspective, but it's more about that culture piece. So that's the first area where an organization has lost its way a little bit from a culture perspective. The second one is around growth. We've had a lot of, over the last probably 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of organizations that have gone through significant growth. And they've kind of got to a point where that growth has sort of stabilized off and they're not really sure why. And there could be a number of reasons why growth stops, right? That could be to do with the first thing I mentioned around culture. That could be that the executive team kind of have grown to a point where maybe they're not thinking strategically enough, or there's a little bit of conflict maybe within the executive team of one people want to go that way and some people want to go that way. Or it could just be that the new product development, MPD, has slowly come to a halt. And again, that's because often when that happens, it's often because people don't feel they have the freedom to be creative. And that is often driven by engagement. So where there's an organization that's kind of hits a plateau and is looking for the next level of growth, we can help them with that by actually engaging with their employees more. That's sort of more of the big strategic things. Then you get into sort of more of the statistical stuff, as I like to call it. So we've talked about the management stuff, Nikki, where 16% only 16% have an effective conversation with their manager. Managers often get promoted because they're good at what they do. They don't get a Bible that then says this is how you manage. Mm-hmm. Yes, the larger organizations often have management training for people to go through. But it's exactly that. It can often be fairly basic management training. And so where we're having some success and having lots of conversations at the moment is around how can we help managers have more effective conversations? And actually, do managers understand what engagement is? Yeah. And so many people we talk to, you talk about engagement and they go, what do you mean? What is engagement? What does it mean? And there are lots of managers that don't understand it because all they've ever had is a survey and data. And a survey and data doesn't help them really to have effective conversations with their team. It just shows them exactly that, data. So the other one is around management training. And then the final one, or the final stats, if you like, that come through are if an organization has attrition issues and they're struggling to retain staff. Often retention of staff or attrition is driven by poor management. One of the biggest reasons people leave an organization, it's not money, it's actually their manager. You leave because of your manager. You leave because of career. You're not getting that development that you need. So often attrition, or if someone's got attrition problems, we work with them on that, and actually looking at engage to lead and engage to succeed helps that. Internal mobility is another one. Career development is another one. All of these things that maybe come out of the survey, but then people go, so what? What do we do with it? And that's where we help. The Engage to Succeed model is a practical tool and framework that helps people to actually understand and go, I get it now. It's not just about this. It's not just about that. And most importantly, I own it. My manager can send me on a course, but if my manager doesn't know what course to send me on, that's not going to engage me. It's me that needs to drive that. I need to be the center of it and drive my own engagement to get the best out of my job. So they're the main principles: the strategic bit, the management bit, and then attrition or internal mobility or training, or all those kind of HR stats where there are some issues with it.
And do you just work with organisations, James, or do you offer anything else?
I do offer other things, yeah. So we talked about Engage to Succeed. Engage to Succeed is obviously driven from an organisational perspective as a workshop, but I also work with individuals as well on a one-on-one basis. So a number of people that I've worked with, they've kind of hit a crossroads in their career, or they're just not enjoying life too much at the moment. What I do is I help them to reset. So yes, the model underpins the conversation that we have, but I take them on a journey of rediscovery. I work with them to understand, what are those motivators, those passions, what are those aspirations that they're trying to get? What is their balance? What are they in sync or out of sync from a work-life balance perspective, and how do they get that in? I work with them on how to have effective conversations with their managers. So how do they manage up how they're feeling and what they're doing? And most importantly, if it's about career aspirations and wanting to develop and grow, how they can have those conversations in an effective way with their manager. And then we conclude it by actually then creating a journey, and I call it the engagement journey. We help them to create their own personal engagement journey, which is the model, everything that sits around the model, why they are where they are, and then how do they get from A to B, which is from where they are today to their aspiration. And that could be a 3-month journey, it could be a 3-year journey, or even in the case when I was trialing this before I set up Engage to Succeed, mine was a 10-year journey of a 10-year aspiration to get to a global director of talent acquisition for a FTSE 250 business, which I did. And then once I'd done that, I decided to leave the corporate life and set up Engage to Succeed. So yeah, I work with individuals on a one-to-one basis as well.
So if people are listening to this and they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to contact you?
I mean, in the professional world, the best way to contact me is through LinkedIn. James Lambert, Engage to Succeed. It's fairly simple to find me on LinkedIn. Connect in with me, drop me a message, and then we can pick up a conversation through there. Or the other way is you can drop me an email. Again, relatively simple, engagetosucceed@outlook.com. Both ways you can get hold of me, and we can talk about any of this in more detail.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Great. No problem. Thank you for interviewing me. Well, it's been good fun. It's a little bit weird being interviewed by your wife, but it's been good fun. I hope you've enjoyed some of the answers and it's helped you to understand a little bit more about Engage to Succeed, what we do, how we're working. And obviously, if you want to get in contact, drop me a message on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, like this video, and I can get in contact with you directly. And hope you've enjoyed it and look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you, Nikki, for interviewing me.
You're welcome.